Rev up your engines!
Thomas Jefferson says, hey, Scotty, what do you think about Ferrari cars? Are they reliable? Yeah, they're really reliable. They're very reliable that you'll spend all your money fixing the stupid things. Those are Italian exotic cars, and price some of the stuff. Years ago, when they still had distributor caps, I could get a distributor cap for a Toyota for $10. And on the Ferraris, the distributor caps were like $450 for the same stupid part, but it fit on a Ferrari. That's just how those cars are. They're rich men's toys, and they fall apart. And if rich men want to spend that kind of money, that's their business. The funny thing is they have horrendous resale value, too. Say somebody pays 220 grand for one. When they're old, you can pick them up all day for 20, 30, 40 grand. Nobody wants those things. They know they're endless money pits. Anchor Canwar says, any comments on Fiat Chrysler merging with Renault? Yeah, two wrongs don't make a right. So when Fiat and Chrysler merged, that's proven already that two wrongs don't make a right. Well, here, you got three wrongs not making it right. Well, four if you include the Renault-Nissan merger. It's kind of like the Three Stooges, and now they're going to the Four Stooges. I don't think it's such a smart thing to do, but that's business and money, and these giant corporations want to make a profit. Like an example I always give, McDonald's sells lots of hamburgers, right? They're not good hamburgers if you eat them all the time. They're not healthy for you, but they sell an awful lot of them because they're cheap and people like eating. It's not necessarily a good thing. So all these people merging together, they may make a profit out of it, but it's not necessarily a good thing. Canwire says, Scotty, I got an 04 Mercedes S500 4MATIC with 39,000 miles. No issue. Is it good for a road trip? What should I check? Okay, well, I'm assuming you're the original owner. That thing's 16 years old and it's only got 39,000 miles. It should be in pretty good shape. I'm not a fan of those Mercedes. They're endless money pits, and the S5s lose their value as one of the fastest value-losing car in the world. As long as it's full of oil and it's not leaking anywhere, it should have no problem at all. Realize when you go on a trip, if you're going 70 miles an hour, that's equivalent to 10% of city driving. So you drive, say, to California, and it's a 2,000-mile trip. That's like the equivalent of a 200-mile stop-and-go traffic trip in town. So it doesn't really wear anything. You don't really have to worry about it. Texas EAS 210 says, what's the hardest repair job you ever had to do? Okay, I was stupid to even try. It was a Porsche 911, and it was one of the early ones where instead of making them right, and the engines are metal and the intake was metal, the intake was plastic. And the manifold gasket went bad. And I actually did it on the vehicle, and it took me forever, and I was cursing and swearing. Then I talked to a Porsche mechanic a few months later. He says, oh, you're out of your mind. I'd never do that. He says, we just pull the engine out of the car and do it on the ground, put the engine back in. I said, yeah, but that's a lot of money. He said, we don't care if they're dumb enough to buy a Porsche, so we'll charge them $1,500 labor for changing the gasket. They wanted to buy the Porsche, they can pay for us to fix it. But I did get it done, you know. It was a real pain in the butt, and I'd never do another one. Jordan S. says, hey, Scotty, I got a 2009 Scion TC. It squeaks when I touch the brakes for a little while. I checked them and they were fine. They squeeze the metal rotors, and they're just bare steel. They turn all the kinetic energy of your car of motion into heat, and they dissipate the heat there, so they get real hot. Well, guess what happens to hot steel? When it cools down, it absorbs moisture, and there's a lot of moisture in our atmosphere. Then they rust, and then they'll make a little bit of noise for a while until they rub the rust off. So, if they're fine, it doesn't mean anything. They're thick, don't worry about it. But if it really bothers you, the next time you do brake pads, use Akebono brake pads, because I don't know what they put in them, but they don't make much noise at all. Even if the rotors get rusty, they don't seem to make a noise. The Japanese that make these Akebono, they seem to really understand composition of the brake pads, and theirs don't squeak at all. So if it bothers you, put some Akebono pads. But if you don't care and you see they're thick, just ignore it. Waldo finds you, says, should I turbocharge my weekend motorcycle? Sure, if you're insane. I know a guy who does that for a living. He's called Mr. Turbo, and he's off 59 North Highway here in Houston, Texas. And he turbocharges anything you want. He does a lot of motorcycle turbocharging. Just realize that if you turbocharge a motorcycle, one, a lot of times you're going to lose control when you really take off fast because it's got so much power and it's only going to one wheel. And two, a lot of times you're going to end up blowing up the engine because motorcycles are made to go really fast, and they're pretty much cutting-edge technology as it is. And you add a turbo and strain the engine even more. The Mr. Turbo guy told me, was there one time he was talking to a guy from Jamaica and he wanted to turbocharge this Honda motorcycle, and he told me, he said, I can get 300 horsepower to the engine, but it's only going to last for a couple of minutes. It's going to blow up. And the Jamaican guy just said, hey, man, I don't care. We're racing them in quarter-mile drag races, and I bet a lot of money on each race. So he didn't care, but if you want it to last, not such a smart idea. Thugs Bunny says, Scotty, I got an '01 Jeep XJ that has a check engine light, but the OBD scanner says it has no codes. What could it be? I have a higher level scanner hooked up to it because some of the scanners are so cheap they don't work that well. I've had many customers bring me a car. They said, it's the light's on, but I can't get a code. And I put on my $5,000 scanner and it finds all kinds of codes. So you might want to start there. If even that doesn't come up with a code and your check engine light is on, that generally means that you either have a wiring short in the computer wiring somewhere, or you got a circuit in the computer that's breaking down that's turning it on when it really isn't a fault. A lot of times, if it's a Chrysler, I can just about guarantee you it's the ECU, the main electronic control unit, that's gone bad on. It's a typical thing on Chryslers. Fidel Castro, I thought he was dead. Alfa Romeos are endless money pits, he says. Yeah, you got the nail on the head there. They always are, they always were, and they probably always will be. It's an Italian company. I mean, a new one, they got a little Sportster that's real fast and everything, but they're already falling apart. That's just the way they are. It's Italian stuff, you know? Looks good, but then it falls apart after a short period of time. It doesn't surprise me. I've had customers with them in the past. They pulled out of the United States decades ago, and now they're back. Surprise. Garrett Horton says, just bought a 2012 Sequoia. Thoughts on these? Well, they're great vehicles if you don't mind horrendous gas mileage. They are huge, giant vehicles with big Toyota V8 engines in them. They can run a really long time, especially in town. They are tremendous gas hogs. If you want a vehicle that big to carry a bunch of people around in, it's a great one for buying. But it's a gigantic gas hog. There's no if or ands about it. Customers of mine that I have, almost every single one of them, when they bring one over, and say, well, you know, just out of curiosity, what kind of gas mileage did it get? And said, I don't know. We don't even check. We know it's bad because when we drive in town, we always got to fill it up. If you don't mind that, they're excellent vehicles. Brandon Does Gaming says, thoughts on a 2003 Nissan Xterra? Well, strangely enough, I just worked on one this week, and I told the guy to get rid of it. As they age, they wear out. Now, his had 163,000 miles on it, and he wanted to know what a noise was. So I drove it, and I could hear it. Only when you took your foot off the gas, you'd hear a clunk. And I knew it was in the transmission, but I put on my fancy little noise machine, like little sensors and transponders, and you clip them on different parts, and I clipped them on parts of the car, and I put on my headphones and drove it around. And when it clunked, I'd switch my receiver to the 4 different things. Well, when I went to the number 2 that was on the transmission, I could hear it clunk, so I knew it was clunking in the transmission. I got a code that was incorrect transmission gear, which means the transmission's wearing out inside. One of those Nissans, I'd get rid of it rather than put money into it. They're fun when they're new. When they're old, they generally wear out, and his had 163. But if you're going to buy a used one, say it only had 90 or 100,000 and it didn't clunk, you still might get another 60, 70,000 miles out of it. But don't pay much for one. It's not worth much.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.